No, I start off just by, I want to thank, certainly our personnel staff. You guys know that they start on this thing 2 weeks after every draft, and the amount of work they put in, the time they spend away from their families, the time on the road, just very appreciative of their work. Excellent as always. The coaching staff, and then the entire support staff. And we do so many things from bringing players in here, just all the logistics. So there's a lot's been into our medical staff. That's such a big part of, our evaluation process. So just very thankful, a lot of gratitude to all those people that put in that time. And with that, I'll take some questions.
Brian, we've all tried to dissect what you mean by your top 30 visits and all that. Whether it's a guy you like, don't like, whatever. What's the overriding purpose of those?
Yeah, with the exception of the subterfuge that Ted always taught us, it's really just about answering a question maybe that we don't have an answer to. Sometimes it's a non-combine guy that we need to get medical information on. Sometimes that's a combine guy. We just have, whether it's, just a football question, off the field situation, maybe it's just getting to know him better. But usually just whenever you only have 30, and that's not very many, and they're very valuable to us. So it's usually just trying to answer something you don't feel you have answered most of the time. There's a lot of guys you go through the process, and you just, you don't feel you have a lot to learn from. So those guys are less likely to be on our 30 visit than some. So.
Is there really subterfuge to it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure.
You have no interest?
Make sure you get that out there. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, sometimes. I think it's, we've been fortunate enough to pick a little later in the first round in most of the drafts that I've been a part of here. And so I don't know how much of that comes into play. I think certainly if you're maybe picking higher in the top 10 and things like that, maybe that has more to do, may have more value. Who knows?
What do you try to accomplish with subterfuge?
Hopefully not fooling ourselves, but no, I think just sometimes, I don't think you want anybody to get a beat on what you're doing, particularly this time of year. So, that was always a fun conversation with Ted when he was around.
Brian, does the board change much between now and Thursday night, or is it pretty set?
Yeah, I think really through this past weekend, we kind of got to a point where we feel really good about where it's at. We'll probably have one more meeting this evening and lock it up really till Thursday. There's work to be done between now and then, and things to do. But as far as guys changing on the board, I wouldn't expect that.
Brian, what's it like to be you during the draft as you sit there and wait to pick, and then you're on the clock, 3 daes of that? I assume that's the most excitement you get out of your job during the year. It's a pressure-packed time.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I think it's. The draft is, when you put as much time into it as we all do. It's an exciting time because you have an opportunity to make your football team better, and I think that's the exciting part about it. I think there's a perception out there that there's conversations and debates and stuff while the draft's going on. There, for us, that's never really been part of it. Those things have happened, prior. It's really just more about just kind of seeing how it's falling and what's expected, what's unexpected, and what the choices are going to be when it's your time to pick. So. The work's been done. It's always interesting how it falls. You never really can predict it. But no, it's always, I think the opportunity to make your football team better is always exciting. And this is an exciting time of year. We got our players back in the building, last week, and the energy just, ramps up tremendously when those guys are in the building, and particularly our group that just really likes to be around each other. So it's just an exciting time, probably for all 32 teams, but certainly for us.
Follow-up, what do you think your heart rate is when you go on the clock for the first time, or waiting for the final pick before you go on the clock?
I guess it depends what's in front of me, right? I just I had no idea. I think to me, again, most of this work's, it's all been done, so the decision is fairly clear when you're on the clock. And I think the things that might ramp your heart rate up a little bit are just if you're involved in some trade talks or opportunities to move backwards or those kind of things, because there's a time, frame to it. But, I think our group has been together for a while now, and so we have a pretty good, way we work together. So I think it's pretty boring, to be honest with you.
Along those lines, some classes are going to be good, some not, just like with any other team. You've been on a hot streak these past couple of years. You've brought in some really good classes, and you've had a group that's been together. What have you discovered? What's been the reason why you've been able to string these classes together?
I think there's probably a lot of reasons, but I think we've pretty much. I mean, again, around here for a long time, we believe in the draft. It's the biggest part of what we do, so we put a lot of time and effort into it. So I think that's why we've had a lot of the success we've had. I think the last couple of years, I think there's been a lot of opportunity for these young guys, or maybe there wasn't in the past. And I think the opportunity can lead to these guys getting to where they've gotten to so quickly. If they don't have that opportunity, it's much harder. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Factored in that too. I mean, you guys have had 24 the last 2 years. I think you're tied for the league lead this year with 11. Just how critical is that with the team building aspect of it too, having those kind of swings?
Yeah, I mean, more at bats, right? You have more chances for hits. So I think there's never enough. I don't ever subscribe to the thought process, hey, we got a pretty good team. These guys might not have a chance to make the team. I think I've talked a lot about competition in every room and how much that accelerates the growth of your football team. I think that's the best way for your team to move forward. So to me, there's never enough. You never have enough ammunition to build your rooms so that there's significant competition in every room. I think that's really important. So we have 11 right now. I'd love to end up with 13, 14 or more. I would never shy away from that.
You mentioned trades a couple answers ago. How do those happen? I'm sure those calls probably happen, today or tomorrow, whatever it is. But how does it come together where when you're on the clock that that team A wants to go up and you want to go down? Or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, particularly with I think the next few days, there's a lot of conversations just trying to get an idea of what teams might be interested in going up, going back, and trying to get some of that information from the different teams. There'll be those conversations. Those are more around the first round. I think the conversations during Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Not necessarily just with me, but with all of my guys that are on the phones with their teams. We have a number of guys that are kind of the contact person for each team, and they're constantly talking to those teams and about whether they're thinking about moving up, whether they're thinking about moving back, and trying to have as much of that information, so we can make the best decisions for us. So they're kind of constant, and they kind of start this week going through the draft and. While we're in the room, whether it's John Eric or Russ or Milt or Woj or any of the other guys that are responsible for that, they're feeding me information. Hey, so-and-so might want to come up. So-and-so is looking to move back. So we're kind of constantly monitoring that as we go through the draft. And if it ever makes sense, that's why I think, we're never afraid to move around. But, where we sit right now with the five picks in the first 91, 11 total, I think we're in pretty good. We're in a pretty good space to move or just sit and pick. So,
what do you like about Andre Dillard, and do you see him as a tackle in your offense?
Yeah, Andre was nice. Nice ability to get him kind of involved in the beginning of our offseason program. Obviously, first round pick coming out, very talented. Spent some time starting last year in Tennessee, so he's got some starts under his belt. Certainly, we lost some offensive line depth over the past few months. And I think it was just an opportunity to bring in another guy we feel is going to be very competitive in that room.
Back to the number of picks that you have, you don't just have a pretty healthy roster, but you have the youngest roster last season in the league. How tough would it be with the youth that you have to fit 11 drafted rookies back onto the 53?
Yeah, I don't think or more, right? I don't think it'll be hard at all. It just depends. I mean, it's going to be. I really, I think the more competitive we can make it, the better. So we'll see how it goes. But I think, it's one of the hallmarks around here has always been that the best players play, regardless of where you were taken or how much you're getting paid, the best players are going to play. So, that's kind of how we want to approach it. So, again, our roster numbers right now are a little higher than they have been, probably a little higher than I'd like at this point. I think we're at 72 right now. And certainly with 11 picks going in there, so there's hopefully going to be a strong undrafted free agent class as well. So we'll kind of see how that goes by the time we get to Saturday.
Some of the characteristics, Brian, of a day 3 offensive lineman, and why have you guys been so good at finding them and developing them?
That's a great question. There's always a little bit of fortune in there as well, but I think this goes back to Ted. I mean, Ted was really good at that as far as identifying what we were looking for in the athletic traits, and I think also just the mentality and the play style of what we're looking for there. And certainly, I think we've carried that forward. I think we've had some really good fortune with those guys in the middle rounds that have been really good players here. We'd like to continue that for sure.
Why is raw athleticism so important in your evaluation of prospects?
Oh, I think first of all, you got to, I mean, most importantly, you got to be able to play this game. That's more important than anything. But I do think that there are certain athletic traits that you have to be able to compete at the level we want to compete at. And I do think, guys that have those have a tendency to be able to have higher ceilings and get better, because if you're lacking in certain areas there's going to be a ceiling, and so again, the most important thing is how you play the game, whether you can play it at a high level or not. But having, certain athletic attributes, I think, allows you to improve and get better and maybe have a little bit of a higher ceiling at times.
Part of we know how you like versatility. Is that something that plays in there as well, that athleticism usually can translate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know this time of year everybody's talking about schemes and different kind of things like that. To me, we're looking for well-rounded guys that could fit any scheme, that can play multiple positions. NFL season is a brutal one, and it's a long one. And I think that the more you can do, and as injuries hit, the more you can cover up for those things, the better.
Into signing Greg Joseph, the kicker?
Yeah, competition. I think certainly, Anders had a promising rookie start, but we wanted to bring in competition. That position is obviously critical to us attaining, our goals moving forward. And, I think we'll continue to, make sure that there's competition throughout training camp on that one.
Ryan, with DeJean from Iowa, do you guys view him as a corner, a safety, or can he do both?
I think he can do both. I think he's very versatile that way. I think he's obviously a very good athlete. His ability to take the ball away is very impressive. Obviously, he's got some team's ability as well. So he's a very well-rounded player. I think he could do either. I think it's really going to come down to just where you may need him.
How do you feel about your receiver room as a whole going into this draft? Last couple of years we all said they need a receiver. It doesn't seem that way this year, but how do you feel about that room?
No, certainly. I think with what some of those guys did last year, I feel we feel very good about the room. I think we have 9 or 10 guys under contract now, which is a high number of receivers going into a draft. So, no, I feel really good about where those guys are at. Every year is a different year, but I think talking about the competition we'd like to create in every room, that one at the moment certainly has that. Again, we're only a few injuries away from those things changing, and we always have to be mindful of that. But I think seeing so many different guys through the course of last year when their number was called step up and perform at a high level, and just knowing that how much more is out in front of those each and every one of those guys, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Going back to one of Ryan's earlier questions about the last couple of drafts, I know you're not a toot your own horn guy, but Ron used to say if you can get 3 starters out of a draft, you've done a good job. And I know you said there were opportunities that maybe aren't there, but to do what you've done the last couple of drafts is really hard. Ron and Ted had drafts that weren't very good, and they were great at what they did. How hard is it to sustain that kind of momentum that you guys have been really rolling with the last few drafts?
Yeah, I think it's every draft class is different, right? I mean, it's out of your control. There's some that are deeper than others, where you're picking and how things fall. It's an interesting, in my time, the drafts is much different than it used to be. I think on average 1.6 players is re-signed from each draft class to a team. So it's not like it used to be where, you'd have multiple guys. The way the salary cap is, the guys you can pay, it's just much harder. So, to me, I think what we're asking of these guys that we pick is to come in and be positive contributors to our football team. And again, the role that they're going to have is not completely in their control. They got to be able to answer the opportunities that are given to them and try to create more opportunities. But where your football team sits and who's in front of them and those kind of things do impact their abilities. And certainly there was times, I think in years past where, where maybe the last couple of years there was just a ton of opportunities for these guys to go seize. And credit to them, they did. And that was exciting to see. And I think that's what we're trying to create as we move forward, is just making sure that there's always going to be opportunities for guys to excel if they're worthy of it.
Is there something about your scouting department that might be better than most teams in the NFL? Is there something unique that you guys do in building your profiles, or something that you emphasize to your scouts when you're putting stories together?
Well, first of all, we got a great staff. The people that are in that department are, top notch, right? So, I think if we have any edge, and there's really good scouting departments throughout this league. I mean, it's a very competitive. But the one thing that I lean on is the fact that we've had a long-term process here for a long time that has not only had success here, but it's had success other places. We believe in that process very, very much, and we have a lot of guys who have been grown up in that process, and they're very knowledgeable of it. So it's not like it's not their first, second year within this. They've been doing it a long time and doing it within this process. So if we have an edge, I mean that's what I feel it is. But I'm sure there's 31 other teams that feel the same way about their process, but. Whether it goes back to Ron and Ted and all the different people that have left here and had success other places, we just have a lot of confidence in that. So but again, I think it comes down to boots on the ground and guys working and putting that effort in.
Continuing that momentum that you guys have had these past couple of years, what you've been able to do, it's awfully reminiscent to what Ted did leading up to that Super Bowl stringing draft classes together. Is there a recognition of where you guys are with a young, building, ascending team and what this draft class could do to propel that forward to maybe another Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, the draft is the lifeblood of this organization. It always kind of has been, right? So that's why we put so much time into it. That's why it's so important to us. Again, it's a funny thing. You can't predict it, and some classes turn out better than others for a lot of variety of reasons. But yeah, I mean, this is extremely important to this organization, this football team. The guys in that locker room are counting us to bring in the right kind of guys to help them achieve their goals. We've talked in here before, and I mean, the guys we bring in, not only in the draft class, but throughout. I mean, they're going to play a huge impact on how our season goes this year, and the guys we bring in this year have to be prepared for that. They have to be able to fit into Matt's process and what he wants to do, and buy into the culture. And that's one of the things I think I feel really good about right now is just not only the culture that we have, how strong it's become, but the willingness for all those guys to compete and when new competition comes in to embrace that.
Do you carry the same mentality or approach into any draft class, no matter where you are in team building, or given that this is an ascending young team, does that spark more aggressiveness to, okay, might just be a couple pieces away, go get those pieces?
Yeah, Ryan, I don't know if I've ever really believed in that whole couple pieces away. I mean, I understand the question. I don't think so. I think I do think you have to be aware of your football team and what you need and what you feel you need to be competitive at the highest level. So if there's opportunities out there where we need to be aggressive to for us to feel like we have a chance to solve that, we would never shy away from that. But at the same time, I think the way our team came together last year, I think we want to continue to embrace that and move forward and allow that kind of that next man up mentality. Like whoever's going to be in the game, you have to be prepared to perform. And so this group coming in is going to have to kind of get up to speed fast.
There's multiple big offensive tackles in this draft, Mims, Guyton, those type of guys. Do you see that height and weight, Latham is another one, as an advantage or a disadvantage when it comes to playing on the line and kind of winning and losing that leverage battle?
Yeah, bigger, faster, stronger is always, certainly something, that's enticing to us. I think, again, the ability to play the game. We do some things in our run game thing that are maybe a little different than some teams. So there's some schematics in there that maybe certain guys fit a little bit more than others. But at the same time, we do everything. So, they got to be, I think one of the things we've done pretty good with our offensive line in the past has been versatile enough that guys can play inside, play outside. They're not just kind of one position players, and I think we'll probably try to continue that as we go forward.
Bill asked you about trades earlier. Curious from a process perspective, using last year's second round as an example. You take Luke at 42, you're sitting at 45. The Lions call, you move back to 48. You're sitting at 48, you move back to 50. In that time, Jaden Reed could have gone, right? And he ends up being your leading receiver. I'm curious, when you're in that kind of scenario, and you got guys there might be guys that are all graded the same, but you might like one guy more. Are you taking a risk that you could lose out on the guy you like best? Can you kind of explain how that works for you as you're going through it?
Yeah, whenever you trade back, you have to expect to lose, the players that, that are on the board that you might be willing to pick at that spot. It's just, that's part of it. I think it's why we work so hard at getting the value right of the players on the board, is so that you can read it and if you feel that it's strong and you can move back and still get someone you have the same kind of value on, you do. I think you got to be very careful of falling too in love with individual players. That's just I think you got to be careful of that. I mean, you have to be, I think, a little bit, you have to think of these things not emotionally, but just kind of like, hey, we do a lot of work to try to get this value right. If the board is telling us we can move back, then we will,
So taking Jaden goes at 49 sucks, but you got another guy that you like, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, we took Luke Musgrave where we took him. We really liked Tucker and couldn't believe he was still there in the third. But, if we would have kept moving back or if Jaden wouldn't have been there, we could have taken him and felt really good about it. So, because, those guys were rated, right there. So, that's why hopefully we were talking a little bit about it being boring. Hopefully you build the board and you go through this enough to where you have enough confidence in the board to follow it, we're all human and every scout in there's got favorite players up there. But at the same time, we're trying to do what's best for the organization and the team, not for us individually. So.
How hard is it to be disciplined like that? Obviously, you put in all the prep, you know what you want to do, but when you get in the moment, you've done this a long time. Is there ever any time the human element has crept in that you say, I should have stuck to our guns? Or how hard is it to actually go the whole draft and stick to that process?
Yeah, you're always hopeful. There's guys up there, and as the board, maybe you're 30 picks away, and you're hoping this guy falls there, and then 3 picks later he's gone. It's just there's some human nature to it because there's a lot of really good players you have to watch come off that board. We picked 25, right? There's going to be 24 really good players that are going to go before we pick if we stay where we're at. So, yeah, it's I think over time, it's less and less. You just you understand the nature of it, and it's fun to watch the young scouts kind of get really hopeful and maybe it doesn't work out and kind of just see them go through that learning curve.
Jair obviously didn't come to the first part of the offseason last year. He did this year. Was that because of a conversation you had with him, or is that just him doing that on his own?
No, I think obviously last year there was a bunch of conversations with John and where he was, what we were going through, and I think he's really excited. I think to get back at it. I think our whole team was really, it wasn't just him, but again, it's week 1. We've had 4 days, but I think everybody was eager to get. From the time the season ended, quite frankly, I think I felt that from our football team was that they wanted to be together, they wanted to work, they wanted to keep going. That's why losing that last game is so hard because I think our guys really they wanted to keep going, they wanted to keep playing, and I could feel that this first week, which is nice. And again, we got a long way to go, but he seems to be in a great space right now.
Without giving away any secrets, you've got college games, you've got combine testing, you've got personal interviews. Does it all just go together, or is one more important than the others?
Yeah, it's all important. First and foremost, it's all important. The medical, everything's important. I think at the end of the day, and this goes back for as long as I've done this, you go back to the tape and how they play the game. I think whenever there's discrepancies, whenever you're not sure, you go back to the tape, and that's going to be your best predictor of future success is what they've done on tape. And so that's kind of what we live by. Again, it's all important. It all factors in. But at the end of the day, it's you got to be able to play this game, not play it at a high level in college, but be able to translate to our league and play it at a high level here.
What are you looking for in a safety opposite Xavier? Does it need to be a bigger guy for Jeff's defense? Or you mentioned in the past a guy who can play slot. That would be a different skill set there then too.
Yeah, no, for me, those guys I'd love to be interchangeable. I'd like them to be able to do everything. I think that really is tough on an offense when those guys can move down inside, they can play the post, they can go in the nickel and cover. I think when you have 2 guys that can do everything, it just allows. I think it'll allow Jeff to be much more, efficient, so to speak.
How many pro days did you get to in person this year, and I guess how much has your personal travel amount changed since you took over as far as being in person?
Yeah, I think I get to 5 or 6 most years now. Back when I was doing the Southeast, you're upwards of 30, or more. Our scouts that are on the road. I think when I was here, working with Ted and kind of overseeing things, I was probably still in the 20s or close to it, I really enjoy them. I wish I could get to more. Obviously, free agency's in the middle of that, which is tough to leave. But I get a ton of value out of it, particularly because I'm not on the road as much. You know, our area guys, obviously, they've been at these schools 2 or 3 times during the fall. They've seen the guys at the All-Star games, the combine. So by the time they get to the pro days, like, you know, they've seen these players a ton. For me, it's another shot, usually after All-Star games and the combine, just to get another view of them in their comfortable environment. And then also just to be able to talk to some of the coaches at those places face to face is always helpful. So I enjoy it. I wish I could do more. It's just, you know, that time of the year is very busy.
Brian, you mentioned when you traded Rasul and got the extra 3rd rounder, that when you have, you know, 5 picks in the top 100, you can usually get like 5 maybe of the top 50 on your board. If you sit and pick at those 5 spots, is that how you feel like you're going to be able to get 5 of your top 50 guys?
Hopefully it falls that way. You never really know how it's going to fall, but usually the way our numbers do fall, you're going to be close to that. So yeah, I mean, again, I think you know, picks on those first 2 days are hard to come by, you know, and so when you have an opportunity to obtain one, I think you have to seriously consider it because certainly the analytics and the history show what kind of player you're going to get in there. Again, the draft's, I mean, littered with players from, you know, 6th, 7th undrafted that have become great players, and certainly picks way up high that don't become players, but certainly improves your odds.
Make it harder to use the day 2 picks to move up in round 1 if you were to want to, or like how does that, knowing you can get really good players, how much does that affect your kind of math there?
Yeah, I think certainly depending on how far you're going to go up, but to give up one of those picks to move up, it better be for the kind of player that you know, you just don't feel you're going to have an opportunity to get in most years. So.
How does character evaluation play in your process? Obviously, if there's red flags, that's one thing, but I'm curious if you've ever come across guys where after meeting them and going through that, you say, he may not be that high on other people's draft boards, but based on character alone, that's a guy we want in a lot.
Yeah, there's definitely some of those guys as you go through the process. You know, their football wiring, so to speak, is so high that you feel really good about their chances not only to succeed in the National Football League, but maybe to fit into your culture and what that might bring. Again, they could be the greatest guys in the world, but if they can't play this game, it's not going to matter. But I do think that plays a significant part of it. I think we put a lot of time into that and who we're putting into that locker room, because I think that's only fair to the guys who are already there, you know. But I think if we want to be the kind of team and want to be the type of connected team that we want to be, it's an extremely important part of what we do.
Could you told a story a few years ago about how Ted used to hide guys on the board. And was it Jordy that you figured out was the one?
I got to the point where I was really, I could figure him out. I think about year 2013, I got to a point where I, you know, was like really good at it. But early in the process, when I was doing the Southeast, there's just occasionally you'd catch a guy where you would know, and Jordy was one of those guys. But and he hated that. He was really good. He was a pretty good poker player that way. You know what I mean? Ted was. And he wouldn't have a lot of them, but he'd always have a few favorites that usually the guy he ignored the most sometimes was the guy he liked the most, you know. But a lot of times, and then when I moved up here in 2012 and was with him, you know, most days, it was the guys me and Elliot kept saying, you know, we need to move this guy up, and he wouldn't do it. You know, that was usually the ones that he was, so.
Did you continue that tradition yourself, and in what ways do you find yourself either thinking about him or things that you learned from him during the course of this 3-day span?
Oh yeah, things I learned from him all the time. He was, you know, he was as good as anybody, you know, to do this, in my opinion. And so, you know, he's and not just me, but our whole room. There's so many guys that work for Ted, and the lessons that he taught us, and some of the great stories. I mean, those come up constantly in that room. We spend so much time in there. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, our process, again, it goes back to Ron, but and Ted kept it really, the foundation of it, he kept it, you know, so much like what Ron did, but it's very much a lot like, you know, what was done all these years. We've tweaked it, we've tried to get better, we've tried to be more efficient, but it's very similar.
I don't know if you can do this without giving anything away, but what were those lessons from Ted that you have implemented for yourself now?
Yeah, I think, it's about the work, it's about the process, don't ignore the signs. Know what you know and know what you don't know, and sometimes when you don't know, you just got to pass, on a particular player, There's a lot. I mean, I think sometimes I think when you get within the process, particularly early on in February in the combat, you want to rush things. And he had a very good way of staying patient and allowing the process to lead you to the decision and the answers you're looking for. And I think we all, that was his nature. He was kind of a slow Texan that kind of just, like most of us are a little bit more maybe aggressive. And so I think we constantly in that room talk about that and making sure we're not moving too fast.
It always comes back to the tape, but obviously analytics have taken over the league a little bit. How much does analytics play a part of your draft process?
Mm-hmm. Mike Hallbach and his staff do a great job kind of supporting our decision-making with that. It's growing, and I'm really excited about where it's growing. Our sport's a little different than some of the other sports where it's really taken hold of fast just because of the nature of 11 guys on the field at the same time. But I really like kind of the direction we're going and how it's supporting our decision making right now and where it might lead to in the future. Not only in personnel decisions, but just across the board of our organization. I think those guys are really growing at a high rate, and I'm excited for where they're going.
Constant conversations of what positions are maybe more important, less important, better to target early in the draft, better to target later. How do those kind of conversations take place analytically?
Yeah, and those conversations have gone on forever, right? Between scouts and coaches, and I think there's more data behind that stuff now, and that's what we're studying and following trends. And again, there's different times in the year where we'll go to those guys and have them do different kinds of studies, and obviously those guys, the way they think outside the box is exceptional. And it's again, I think you got to be going back to Ted, you got to be a little slow as you move into that, and making sure it's right as it supports your decision making. But I'm really excited about the work they're doing.
Two more, please.
Udi, you mentioned a couple times the opportunities that last year's class got.
Mm-hmm.
You had some pretty veteran teams starting at quarterback for the first few years of being in the gym. What you saw last year, or maybe to some degree the year before, has that changed your philosophy at all? I remember Ted used to say, after the draft, it was always the same thing, right? The guys that are already on our team are the ones who are going to decide our success,
Sure.
And we hope these guys can help. Has that shifted a little bit because you saw what all these young guys were able to do because you had to play them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if it's really shifted. Maybe giving me more confidence in the fact that I've always felt that you're right. The players you have currently are going to be the ones that shape your team. I do think that players if you give them the opportunity early to make the mistakes and get to the other side of it, that they can profoundly impact your team in the second half of the season and maybe into the playoffs. I've always felt that. I think last year, certainly that helped us. It doesn't work out that way every time, every year, but I do think you got to be willing to kind of live through the growth period if you want to get to the other side of it.
Good. You think about going to Brazil?
Excited for it. I mean, it's. I'll say there's going to be some challenges along the way. It's going to be new, but we're. Obviously, it's an away game on a neutral field, and I'm excited about that. I think our players are very excited for it. So it's going to be certainly going to be interesting Friday night. I think it'll give us a little bit more recovery before the next game. Hopefully, that next game's a home game for our fans. So yeah, we're working through the scheduling and trying to figure out where the obstacles and the challenges are with it. But I know our players are excited, and to me, it's just another opportunity. So
playing Philly in Brazil's better than playing Philly in Philly, isn't it?
I would think so. Yeah.